a second.
We're live. Hi, everybody. I'm Betsy Freeman. Welcome to our panel on making music in tough times. I've got three excellent guests coming from the LA, California area. And to kick us off today, thank you for watching. Feel free to comment live and ask us questions. We'll try to read those and answer as best we can. And I'll kick off to Tim to introduce himself.
Hello, my name is Tim Langeloh. I am a songwriter here in Los Angeles and also a student going back to school. So I primarily write on guitar, but I'm also messing around with electronic music and trying to learn some of that basics as well.
Awesome. Christian?
I'm Christian. I am a keyboardist, bass player, and arranger. Glad to be on here.
Awesome. And Mathew.
Hi, I'm Mathew Crofoot. I'm a former electronic musician way back in the day, and a former DJ, and a big music enthusiast. So also glad to be here.
Excellent. So my name is Betsy Freeman. Welcome to my page. If you haven't watched one of our lives before, in non-COVID times, I help to book musicians for gigs and help promote their work. I still do that for online events, and sometimes we'll plan online events and retreats. I'm also a pianist and singer. I sing opera. I also do a lot of church music when church services are meeting, and I've recorded some online services as well. And I'm excited to have this conversation, especially because I know music can sort of ebb and flow for us. And we're definitely going through a different season for musicians than we've ever had before collectively, but we all respond to it differently. So I'm curious how making music or listening to music or preparing for maybe the post-COVID season is going for you. Tim?
Yeah, I think COVID has been an interesting opportunity to not only look in, but also look around and just make art out of what we see. I had a English teacher who talked about how artists often have like their antenna up and they're swirling and they may pick up things that are in the air, either before people realize them or that haven't quite been put into words. So I've found in my writing, some stuff has been COVID related, some things have been politics related just because of the situations we've been. And a lot of it has been listening to myself and what I need out of this time. I think creating music that I wish I could listen to, whether it's lullabies, for like a sleep or a peaceful transition to sleep, or escape music that's just fun and different and gets you out of your head and gets you laughing. I've found that listening to my needs has dictated what kind of music I output and what kind of music I gravitate towards too in my own listening preferences.
Thank you. Christian?
For me, since the pandemic started, pretty much almost all of my opportunities, well, most of them anyway, to play for people or to arrange for people have almost completely gone away. There's a few exceptions. I've done a few things here and there, but that left me a bunch of open space to do things that aren't music related that I've always wanted to do. So that's what I've been up to.
Oh, that's great. No way. It's odd, yeah. There's only so much that we can take on at one time, right, Mathew?
Yeah, so during this season, we're all spending a lot of times at home, and definitely a lot of emotions running rampant. And So what I like to do is I like to use use music to kind of craft a mood to my, parts of my day, or so basically when I get up, I might play really soft acoustic music or like electronic music that's very like has no words and is really quiet, or maybe like old. I have a playlist called Midnight in Paris, which is like these old, really like quaint songs from the period, and really helps me kind of get my morning going. And then when I'm working, I'll put on different kinds of music. We were talking before the stream about like matching the music you listen to the mood and the energy that you want at the time. So I've really kind of music's been my friend during this period to kind of craft all those things. There's a bit of catharsis as well. Every once in a while, you'll play certain songs because you're feeling a little overwhelmed, or you want to help you express some of the emotions and let them out a little easier. So that's been fun. Another thing I've done more on the creative side is to try to put together some playlists with various themes. So it's kind of like the former DJ in me. So one cool playlist I put together was, a few of us watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off on like a Netflix watch party. And so I'm like, okay, I want to put together like a Ferris Bueller's inspired soundtrack, because there actually never was a soundtrack for that movie. And some people have put together a soundtrack since with a lot of the actual songs, and then like some of the outtakes and different like little fun things. But there's a lot of songs that could be on that soundtrack that aren't. So like looking at the posters, and Ferris's room is really cool. Like he has like Cabaret Voltaire posters, which is like an old electronic band from the 80s. Simple Minds is up there, Flesh for Lulu. Really interesting songs like that. And then you got some of the songs that were in the movie that were really interesting, like Mirror in the Bathroom, I think is in there, and some other ones. So Six Buck Nick is on there. Of course, Oh Yeah by Yellow. So so I put together a cool little playlist to actually help one of our friends, Becky, kind of understand like the whole time period and the genre of like what might go in a movie like that. So that was fun. Another cool playlist I put together was there's been a theme lately at the end of really cool like TV shows on like like I remember watching like Red Oaks and like Glow, and like in the end sequences they'll play these amazing like 80s songs that are like not the obvious song, it's like not the most popular song ever, but it's like, wow, that just fits into kind of like the cinematic soundtrack kind of feel. So there's a What Makes You Think I'm the One by Fleetwood Mac, which is not a song you hear very often, but that's at the end of this one Red Oaks episode. I'm like, oh my God, this is such a great song. I got so inspired by it. And so, so I put together like a 9.5 hour playlist of basically kind of like alternative 80s music that kind of would fit into either a movie soundtrack, a TV soundtrack, or at the end of a TV show. Another thing that really inspired me to do that was there's a Glow episode where they have a Susie and the Banshees song Cities and Dust at the beginning, where there's like this 2-minute sequence where they're showing 6 months pass, and they're just constantly coming and going in the same room and changing their clothes and stuff like that to this amazing like old goth song from the 80s. And I'm like, that's such an amazing directorial choice, and that song's on the list. So that's really exciting and fun to do. And so I posted on Facebook for a few people, and one of my friends drove across Canada listening to the entire playlist, which was great validation for me as an artist. So that's kind of some of the stuff I've been doing. Anyways, go ahead, Tim. What do you got?
Matt, are these playlists like anybody can listen to? Like, are they published on Spotify?
Yeah, they're on Spotify, so I can certainly post them up in the show notes or something, or on Facebook after this. So.
Please do. Yeah,
there's one called Holiday Road, which is all like road trip songs, kind of based on the Lindsey Buckingham titular song "Holiday Road" on the way to Wally World from National Vacation. What is it? National Vacation? No, the Chevy Chase movie.
Oh yeah. Not Christmas Vacation. The National Lampoon, the first
National Lampoon's Vacation. That's what it's called. So yeah. Cool.
That's a great movie. I think I definitely put together, like, I got back into iTunes, like I had sort of been, I was like, oh, look, all my music's still here. And, I put together a soothing mix and then a 90s mix. And yeah, I think it's interesting because I think I turned a corner in the last few weeks. Or it was like before I only wanted to listen to the old stuff. And now I'm kind of bored with that. Like for months, that was the comforting stuff that I listened to as a teenager. That's what made me feel safe. And it's not just in COVID. It was like even previous to that. For years, there's only a few new artists that I wanted to hear. But now, I'm starting to, branch out into whatever, iTunes might suggest a little bit and be willing to listen to some new stuff. So that's kind of a nice change. I don't really know what that means about my psyche, but I think I take it as a good thing. I think like what Tim said, yeah, going from what you need and what brings you joy. I mean, as a musician, you can easily be brought into other people's projects, and there's a lot of value into working on other people's stuff, whether you like their stuff or not. But one of my friends was saying the other day that she used to make herself sing a lot of opera that she didn't really care for, and she doesn't really see any value in doing that anymore. Like she only wants to sing the opera that she really likes. And I think in this season, that's why like I've been doing Billy Joel covers, is because I love Billy Joel. Really just like us to be able to listen to old familiar things together and sing them together. And, that feeling of having some camaraderie and unity that has nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with religion, and is yet something, and something that we can all share, is really important. And I forget how important that is, that, we can't get into agreement on all of these things even in a generation, but we can still have fun together, and we need that. We really need that.
I think that's what I love about music is there's so many complex nonverbals getting communicated at once that and then verbals on top of it, but those just add to the mishmash, that you can just pull like a piece out of a chord, or like part of an arrangement out of something dynamic, and you're just like, ooh, that touches how I feel right here. And in ways that you can't find in other art forms that are just a singular thing. Like poetry is so much, there's mood and there's things, but it's all very specific, and it doesn't have the same mishmash effect that I just love that you get through your headphones or your speakers.
Yeah, there's something about too, remembering the first time you heard a song, or those special moments. People were commenting saying, oh, this song was played at my wedding, or this song reminds me of this, that you never know what you're hitting on, for another person. And I find that so much fun.
I probably do that all the time whenever I play with other bands, and I'll never know because I never get to speak with them. But I do think that it's a cool thing that I'm still able to do that. Well, at least was before COVID.
Absolutely. Yeah, Christian's band Higher Ground is absolutely fantastic, and they play stuff from the 70s to the thousands and beyond. And we really had the group that I went with to Smokehouse pre-COVID. We really had a great time. So I'm looking forward to the day when we'll be able to play again together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, same here. I like what you said, Tim, about like finding little bits of a song, even if it's like just a few notes. Like there's an old Ann Peebles song, "I Can't Stand the Rain." And I played that for you once, and there's like these 3 notes, like dun, it's like dun 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 or something like that. It's just such a hook, and I think that leads to an interesting question maybe for the group is, what do you think of hooks that are purely production based versus hooks that are more musical? So like some of these things, like some of these more modern songs have hooks because they've just put so much technology behind it and layered so many things and created a soundscape, but you couldn't really reproduce it if you just played the piano per se, versus like a musical hook, which is a little bit more eternal and timeless. Discuss.
Yeah, I don't know if there's one that I would say I love more than the other. I mean, if you think of like, the theme, it predated CSI, but there's that Out Here in the Field song. I don't know who does it, but you know what I mean? That has that synthesizer intro. And it's really
Baba
cool.
O'Reilly by The
They-
Who. Yes.
Right.
Oh man, I mean, I don't have like that strong feelings for CSI, but I love that song. It's like every time that theme song comes on, I'm like, oh man, this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Teardrop at the beginning of House by Massive Attack. Such a great song. But is that a production hook or is that a musical? It's kind of both, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or has the understanding of production become a sense of music to the producer? Like you look at the way like New Order did Blue Monday,
Blue
right?
Monday.
And they just talk about
Which is
it
a disco
like,
song, by the way.
yes.
Totally.
And it's amazing. And they talk about, we just programmed a bunch of stuff and like to throw it on as an encore, but everyone's like, oh, it just hits me. And it's amazing.
It's Giorgio Moroder. That's really what it is.
I'll be right back. I want to share something.
He's got something for us. All right, DJ, go DJ. Woo.
I have a UK pressing of the floppy disk 12-inch of Blue Monday.
Oh my gosh.
Someone got me as a gift. I love this thing.
That's amazing.
Best 12-inch cover ever, I think.
Awesome. I've just been downstairs in our basement clearing out and consolidating a lot of my dad's old stuff, and he's got lots of old vinyl records. And I haven't, like, we had a turntable when I was a little kid, but we don't have one anymore. And some of these were living in his parents' house up until, probably 5 or 6 years ago. So I've never heard them. And I really should. It would be kind of a nice thing for, the two of us to talk about. Probably, I mean, I know kind of what he likes, but I think a lot of the songs in those albums he knows I've never heard on the radio or any other way.
Yeah.
If you're considering getting a turntable, I would say the Audio Technica LP120. It's a pretty good turntable. It sounds good. I don't think it's that expensive, and yeah.
All right, thank you. Yeah, maybe I should buy my parents one for their anniversary or something.
Yeah, and speaking of what you're talking about, Tim, I think some styles lend themselves to the production hooks, or literally the whole style is production. So like techno is production, right? Like there's just these 2 or 3 little notes. There's really not music there. It's mostly just drums and just 2 or 3 notes. Some songs took it to a new level, but
I wouldn't say that's so much production. I would say that's arrangement, because a lot of that's rhythm. Like the rhythm is really, really, really dominant, and that's really important. So it's the way that you arrange the drums. It's the way that in many ways it's a lot like it is a lot like disco.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also hard to keep it fresh for like longer stretches, because a lot of people that don't know music theory, it's really easy to make a very boring song, especially when you stretch it out to 6 minutes, right? So that's where arrangement really comes in, and having longer phrases and things like that. I think it's both for that kind of music. Go ahead, Tim.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's a lot of like my personal style of understanding arrangement has come from the back door of electronica, because they're like, especially over the long versions of songs, how they have the slow build so that DJs can mix them in at different times and things. That just upped my understanding, of like, oh, this comes in, then this comes in, then this, and like much in a similar way to like a Sigur Rós song off of Talk would just kind of have that build as well.
But I mean, people were doing that in the 70s too. So like before all the electronics, like I said, the disco era is really where most of that comes from.
Yeah. So and that's my understanding of disco songs is lower. So I'm glad to hear and to learn more about that from you. So.
Christian, do you feel disco songs have like traditional song structures, like bridges and breaks and like choruses and things like that, or is it a little bit different?
Yes, they do. Some of them are AABA because they're influenced by jazz, of course, but a lot of them are standard verse chorus. But their big innovation was having these big long songs for DJs to play in Studio 54.
Right.
And that evolved into house, into techno, into Italo disco in the early 80s and all that. And that's ultimately where it does come from. So sometimes you would have these long bridges that would go on for a really long time, like in the Disco Inferno, or like trying to think of other examples. I guess Donna Summer, like they would have like big instrumental breaks or something like that.
Right,
and
right.
and then Giorgio Moroder with the sequencer, like I Feel Love, like that was that. But even that, the disco, like when they were vamping that stuff all the time, those vamps came from funk.
Right. And they lived on afterwards, because like other bands would sample these hooks and just use loops from these disco songs too, like in hip hop and other stuff. So
yeah,
it's amazing how
the
it just
hip
keeps
hop
getting...
actually comes from funk. It comes from James Brown.
Yeah,
it comes from James Brown, Curtis Mayfield. Trying to think of who else. The Apache, I forgot the name of the band that did that, but yeah, that's where a lot of that comes from. And then a little later, Zapp and Roger and everyone sampled that in the 90s, and it's still funk though.
and then there was ABBA right in the middle of it all that inspired so many people.
Talking about Mamma Mia and ABBA.
One of the things for me that was impressive is like I heard all these amazing songs in the 80s and then found out they were all covers or derivative of ABBA.
Right.
And at the time I had no clue. And then like over the years, as you start working backwards, you start finding out like, oh wow, like a lot of the 80s were covers actually.
Right.
And even before that, there's a lot of these record labels in the 50s and 60s insisted on their artists doing covers of everyone else's hit songs, as opposed to writing new material all the time. So I always found that fascinating.
Yeah.
And the time that I grew up, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think a lot of us, feel like why write something new and put it out there if you know something wonderful already? I mean, I think you can and should do both, but I'm not about to start playing something out in the world unless I think it's, at least as good as, what's good out there. So
that brings an interesting point of like, when do you start sharing your music in the creative journey or just in art in general? Like, how do you find like the level of talent that you're putting in is like either safe enough for other people's consumption, or like other people are safe enough for you to bring your like not as good stuff too? I don't know.
I don't think talent really is a factor as to whether people are going to consume something or not. I mean, look at William Hung.
Well, yeah, but I mean, sadly, people are listening to that to sort of poke fun at him. I mean, maybe he has some genuine fans, but I don't think that
he probably does. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there are. I'm trying to think of who else. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so I won't say anything. But yeah, but that I think that's probably the best example. And there's probably a few others, but I can't think of them right now.
Yeah,
definitely. I was going to say it's a really good question, Tim, because I was talking to someone about this yesterday. Is that with music, there's so much pressure to make a song and or an album, and there's not a smaller unit that is marketable or like able to be shared easily. I was thinking like, why can't you make like a cool like 10-second loop and have that playing outside of Macy's when people walk in, and that is art. Yeah. It's like a doorbell is, I guess, a smaller unit.
And it's interesting, like for me, I grew up playing NES games like nobody's business, right? And that was one of the forms of music that I consumed, was like 20-second loops.
Or like influential to a lot of people, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's this great band in Boston called Freeze Pop, and they do all these cool like kind of 80s-ish type things, but they program on a thing called a QI-20, I think it is, by Yamaha. It's like a little handheld 8-bit sequencer, and it sounds like one of the old Nintendo games half the time, but it creates a really cool sound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I grew up in the SNES era, so I grew up on a lot of the beat 'em ups and things like that, and those had great soundtracks too. And I feel like that's also influenced me as well.
Yeah, I love now that we've come to an era that like that our generation like now has enough clout that we're like getting fully symphonized versions of like these songs, like
Right.
When Legend of Zelda came out with their 25th anniversary and they released Skyward Sword, it came with like a disc of symphonic versions of Zelda songs, and like I still tear up when I listen to that CD.
I never got that CD because I was never a fan of Skyward Sword, but that's just me. I always preferred Twilight Princess.
Yeah. Well, I think you can still find the stuff on Spotify, so
Cool.
Go searching.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah.
Actually, I did go to. I went to the concert. I actually did go to the concert.
Sick.
I just haven't heard the disc yet.
Yeah, I'll say the Pacific Opera Project has started doing different themes for their for their operas. So one of them was they did a Super Mario Brothers version of what's it called? Magic Flute. And it's really fun. You can watch it on YouTube. The set is great. It's just there's a lot of fun. If you haven't played it, you probably won't get all of it. But even if you haven't, you probably you'll probably just find it hilarious. And I think those mashups are really fun because the old forms of opera and that kind of stuff, there's a lot of people that have never been exposed to opera, so it's kind of a cool thing to do. And I think you can do those things badly too. I mean, you have to do it well. You couldn't do it has to be treated the right way to do a symphonic version of Zelda, otherwise it's gonna come off super awkward and super bizarre.
Yeah, there has to be like the respect for the material, I think, and for the that it is and that it comes from. I love that the opera is doing those things, and it just reminds me of just the theater world's interpretations of things over time, because you have these classic scripts that you've done over and over and over, but how do you interpret them into a modern context, or how do you bring new life into them? It's something that we see sometimes in covers, where it's like, oh, what does this sound like as a reggae song? What does this sound like in something else, and coming at it from a different angle. But it's cool. I don't know, I love that the differing perspectives that we can get on something so familiar in those things.
Absolutely. And even, just covering with just people have covered, Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah, a number of different ways. Or why is that funny, Tim?
Because that song has been like, that's I don't know, that's like one of those songs that has almost been covered to death in my life, so sure.
Or Imagine, like, springs to mind. There's
Have you guys heard a song called Heartbeats by The Knife? But this guy Jose Gonzalez did this really chill like acoustic cover, and it's actually ranked higher on like Spotify. Like it comes up first, even though it wasn't his song. But yeah, that's a great example of an amazing cover that totally reinterpreted the song, and both versions are amazing.
Yeah,
I think to answer your earlier question, Tim, about when do you bring your stuff out to show, I think that for me it's about having a certain, probably watching other people fail and seeing that it's safe for them to fail, like if they're or to feel or once I've gotten some positive comments about something I did somewhere, I'm willing to take it other places. I actually went on New Year's Eve. A friend of mine was playing with his band in this little small town bar, and in a county that had voted not to shut down completely for COVID. And I told him, I was like, I would be, he's like, I've never been here before, I don't know any of these people, but this guy wanted to keep his bar open, and he hired me. And I said, I really think that's not easy. I mean, they do mostly covers of like 90s, Green Day, Smashing Pumpkins, and Nirvana, all that stuff, and they do a really good job. I don't know most of those songs, but I'd still be like pretty scared to just go into a place where I know absolutely no one as a solo artist, for sure. It's probably a little easier with the band, and especially when you're doing mostly covers. But there's something about, in some ways it's like, well, it's okay, I don't know any of these people, so, and I don't ever have to see any of them again, so if I screw it up, it's there's nothing really lost. I haven't lost face that much. But on the other hand, I don't know, the thought of like having a cricket response, I think to most performers, like that, there's a real fear that goes along with that.
And when it comes to covers, there's really two schools of thought. There's the idea that it's already been done before, so you need to be original and do something that is you rather than them. And then there's the other school of thought, which is the authenticity. Basically, because they did it the best, you need to do it like that. Otherwise, it's not really that song.
Right, and that's like sort of the classical, idea as well. And I think that's one of the big frustrations that most musicians who want to express themselves come up against. And there's a Fiona Apple song where she says, give us something similar to what we know already.
Right.
So, but no musician just wants to serve you what you know already, for the most part. And those people a lot of times get treated like a hack. Actually can make such a great living, playing covers at casinos. And there really is nothing wrong with that. And if you like it, I think that's fantastic.
Exactly.
I could probably do that for a living and be perfectly happy. But a lot of real, people that really consider themselves artists, like they would rather die than do that.
Especially if the band is no longer around or the people are deceased, because
right.
it really brings so much joy to people to hear those songs.
Right.
A lot of these super bands have got new members like Journey and Excess and stuff, and can spread the joy to new generations because of that. So.
Or even like a band has been, like, you get like a band that's been touring for 30 years and they don't play the song the same that it was on the album because they've played it a gazillion times and they need to keep it fresh from themselves. Right. And I remember seeing U2 and being so disappointed by Bono's version of With or Without You, because he would just go with or without you, and so with or without you, and it was like, oh, where's the high note? Where's that high note? But
right.
He needed it different, and so I would have to go to like a cover band to get that same passion.
Right.
Yeah.
And similarity. Yeah. One thing Christian brought up, which I thought was interesting, I never thought about this, is that a live cover band needs to have the authenticity and be like almost exactly, whereas if you're doing a cover as a normal band, doing it the same is actually like horrible, because it's like there's no artistic differences then.
Not necessarily. I encourage every single one of you to go listen to Wham's version of Love Machine by the Miracles. It's exactly the same.
Exactly the same, huh?
It's exactly the same.
So do you think that song should even have been made? Was it just a waste of everyone's time, or like what's
different?
No, I don't think so.
I think it just proves that George Michael was at that level where he could do the Miracles to that caliber. I think really that's what that proves.
I have an example of that too. The band Bauhaus, Peter Murphy does a cover of Ziggy Stardust by David Bowie, and he wants to be David Bowie more than David Bowie wants to be David Bowie. So the song really just works because he's so passionate about making this cover, just making it amazing. I almost think it's better than the original.
Oh yeah, that happens a lot.
Heard the Weezer version of Africa, and I felt like it did nothing to improve or really change much the Toto version. And I felt like it was like, it's one thing to be at a Weezer concert and they do a cover of Africa, like that's awesome. But like, to me, then you're just kind of taking some time away or taking some royalties away from the original band who did a wonderful job with their original recording. So
the writers still get paid. They still get paid for that.
Got it.
And it was like entirely done out of fan service too, with a big internet swell to like do the cover and things.
Right.
You know, it's like, okay, the people are asking for this, maybe we should give it to them. You know,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I also had with the Disney remakes of movies and the way they have tried to remake Sound of Music and stuff. I've had mixed reviews. I mean, I feel like they've all been different. I really liked Cinderella. I really didn't care about Beauty and the Beast, and some of them I felt like were just a money grab. But then others of them, I felt like they added something new to it. So
yeah. Well, I actually enjoyed Beauty and the Beast. The others, not so much.
Really?
Yeah.
Go figure.
Matt, do you have a favorite Disney movie?
I really like Mulan. Yeah, like I bawl when
The
I
remake?
watch that.
The remake?
Yeah, like
Really?
Wow. No, I'm sorry, Moana. I didn't.
Oh,
see,
yeah,
I didn't
yeah,
see
yeah, yeah.
Mulan yet. I haven't seen Mulan. Moana. I'm like, whoa! I just bawl whenever I see that thing. So that's really good. I'd have to think back to make sure it's actually Disney. Some of the older stuff, but because some of these studios, it's all spread around a lot.
I'd probably say that my favorite animated film of the past 10 years is probably Coco.
That was a good one.
Yeah. Well, I just saw Soul. I thought that was fantastic. And
yeah, I want to see that as well.
Yeah, I still prefer Coco.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
Good, but I have to say, it wasn't really for the music, and neither one of those movies is stuck with me. But
So should I throw out another question, Betsy, or do you got some?
Yeah, go for it.
So I was curious what equipment people have used throughout like their music writing careers. Like, what did you start with, and where did you end up with? I think since we're all different ages, I think we're gonna hear like some really interesting differences. So Betsy, why don't you start us off?
Sure. My parents have an upright piano. It's the Goldbranson, and it was my mom's piano, and it's still here downstairs. And then let's see, through college, I just used the college's pianos on campus. They had like Yamaha digital pianos and upright pianos in the practice rooms. And so then upon moving to LA, my uncle gave me he said, I'll buy you a piano. So I went to the, which is a great gift, of course. He gave me a budget. I went to the Guitar Center and got a Yamaha digital piano. It's wooden console, but you can take it apart. So it's really heavy. It has weighted keys. It doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles. Like, it'll play you demos of all kinds of different things, but and you can definitely hook it up to record and everything, but it doesn't give you a lot of different sounds or anything like that, because I don't really care about that. Like, I would like to eventually get into composing all of that. It's just very time consuming for me, and it takes a lot for me to compose all those different things. So I'm still just all about the piano and vocals, and then like bringing other people around me to add what they can hear.
The richness. Does that keyboard have like foot pedals or some sort of attachment for that, or? Yeah,
it has a foot pedal that I just plug in.
So is it just a keyboard like you can put on a desk, and then you attach a foot pedal, or is it actual?
It has like a legs that you hook it to, and I have to get under it with a screwdriver, and so it's in the back of it'll fit in the back of a sedan, like just barely. You can shut the doors, and then you just put the
Cool. Now, if you were to record some of your stuff that you're playing on piano or singing, how would you do that? Like, what do you use for that?
Well, yeah, so it's an ongoing project to get the right software on my computer, and maybe I might have to upgrade my computer to do it well, to get like the right kind of notation software where I can just play into my keyboard. So I have one of those Focusrite Scarlett interfaces that you can plug everything into. And I bought myself a vocal mic. I don't have the right stand yet, but that's a project for 2021. In February, when I get back up to Washington, which is where my piano is, I'll be working on putting that all together, and hopefully, that's the quick and easy way, right, to get sheet music out of your work or to record.
Okay, so you kind of like you can play around organically and then turn it into like here's the sheet music and adjust it and then print it and then you got a copy of what you actually played then.
Yeah, I mean that's like how my classical train works. I mean, I definitely could just record video or use audio on my phone.
Yeah.
That's what I'm doing, is just using a little audio recorder on my phone to make little demos of things, or even when I'm recording for church, just sending over a little MP3 that I created. But that's not long term. I'd really like to take those production classes and get the good software and start composing in layers would be fun.
Yeah, definitely. Watching like the movie Music and Lyrics, like they put together this little demo over a weekend. He's got a little home studio. And it's kind of a hybrid of what you're talking about. He's got the piano in the living room and a little keyboard, but he also has a little mini computer setup that allows him to sequence and record the vocals and layer in some stuff. So it's kind of like, I think it's great that you went first, because I think we're going to see a lot of different answers from everyone else. And
Absolutely.
what's cool about your approach is it honors the live creation of music more. Whereas as we move to some of us, it's more like it's easy to preserve what you recorded and replay it perfectly, but it kind of gets in the way of the creative process sometimes. So I think that's interesting. Cool. Anyways, so Christian, what do you got?
I could take it all the way back if you want.
Yeah, take it. I want to hear it. Yeah, take it all the way back. You're the hardcore musician here, so
I started when I was really, really, really young. One of the first keyboards I remember having was this little portable Yamaha keyboard. It wasn't very big. It only had like maybe 30 something keys on it. But that's how I learned what the notes were and what they sounded like and how to put things together. And then later on, this is mid 90s, I want to say. As the later 90s went on, I started using the, let me just make sure I have the unit right. Oh gosh, work. It's the Kurzweil.
K2, that's awkward. K2000 maybe, or
no, the is it the SP88? Okay. It was a digital stage piano, and I used that for a long time. And then right around 1999-2000, I got another Yamaha portable keyboard, but it was a fuller keyboard. So that was more for myself to practice, but it also had this little sequencer on it. And I made sequences of some of my favorite songs. And I would pick the parts apart and try to play each part and put it all together. And I made full songs like that. And that's how I did it from probably the ages of 6 to maybe 12 or so when I eventually got the we had a motif for a little bit too, the Yamaha motif. As far as using the computer, that didn't really come along until around the time we got Macs, which was probably like the later 2000s. And I started off on GarageBand, and I had this, is it the RY20 drum machine I think I had at that time? And actually backing up a little bit, I started guitar when I was 10 back in 2003. And I started bass when I was 11 in 04. So at that time I was getting into like rock and metal and things like that. And I started with that little drum machine making like metal songs in GarageBand. Wow.
That's cool.
And then I moved to Logic right around 2009-ish. And I've been using Logic ever since.
Nice. Cool. That's a great history there. All right, I'm going to interject my story here because I want to hear Tim's last. So I started with a recorder, like one of those little flute-like things, and we had a piano at my parents' house. My mom taught me the Greatest American Hero theme song and some other like little stupid songs like Chopsticks and like I don't know, things like that. I was never very good at the piano, but took some lessons, and Didn't do much for a while. Then I played the trombone because I thought it was really cool with the slide, but it's so heavy and you have to carry it everywhere. So that wasn't much fun. So I didn't do much more with music until I was in college, and I was really into like industrial and techno kind of music around that time. And so I was just fascinating with it. I'm like, I want to make this kind of music. So, and, you know, dance music and stuff. So I'd go to like a dance club until like, you know, 1 in the morning, and then come home and stay up all night writing like songs, you know. And so I had, somewhere along the way, I had a Casio, like a really crappy Casio from like Toys R Us, and, you know, goof around on that, and I always had all these stupid, you know, drum loops and stuff. But so I got I think some sort of Yamaha thing with like this little joystick where you could like bend the sounds a little bit. And I had a Kawaii keyboard, which was horrible. It had 4 voices, and for people that are listening, a voice is like a sound. So basically, if you can only have 4 voices, that means you can only play 4 sounds at the same time. And when you hook a keyboard up to like a computer sequencer, you can send signals to play a bunch of things. Like, let's play a drum sound, like a kick drum and a snare and a hi-hat and a note. And then you start playing chords. And this thing can only play any of those 4 things at one time. So it was making all this horrible, like, it's like the worst sounding stuff because it's like flanging and certain notes weren't playing. I couldn't figure out what the heck I was doing wrong. And the problem was I just didn't have good equipment. So I finally figured that out, and I was using Cakewalk, which was a really old sequencer program on the PC. This was late 90s at this point. So I got my parents to buy me a sampler, which was like the holy grail. You can basically record little snippets from movies and play them back, and record sounds and, you know, your environment, and make them into little like percussive noises and things like that. So that was a lot of fun. And then this is the Ensoniq ASR10 was the sampler, and it had all the bells and whistles. Had a little floppy disk drive that you could store your sounds and samples on. So that kind of got me started. Then I developed a gear habit. In my room, literally, like I had a bed and a chair and like 3 walls filled all around in a square of like floor to ceiling rack mounts with like computers and like a keyboard in front to control it all, and like mixing boards rack mounted, you know, compressors, patch cables, synthesizers, you know, drum modules, all this stuff, right? It cords everywhere. And I pretty much would roll out of bed into like this U-shaped pod and just create madness, basically. So that was a lot of fun. You know, over that time period, it was right when analog was kind of turning digital. So I had a lot of what's called outboard gear. So that's like a lot of real synthesizers. I had access to a TB-303 by Roland, which was one of the things that made a lot of house music and acid techno at the time. I didn't have my own, but my friend had that. I had a Jupiter 6, which is like a super old analog keyboard, and a couple more of these old famous ones. The sounds that came out of these things were just unbelievable.
Oh my gosh.
The problem is they didn't have MIDI, and MIDI is for the people listening, you can hook a computer to a cable to your computer and send sequencing information to play notes at certain times. So you could make these things sync to each other, but you couldn't tell them to work via MIDI, and there wasn't a lot of gear to kind of convert at that time. So
Were you using CV gates or?
Not really much on CV gates, but a lot of what we would do is record the analog synths into something like actual sound files, and then drop them in and play them along with the other stuff. So we'd like sample them sometimes. So that was a lot of fun. Using the samplers, I had a K2000 rack mount unit, a thing called a Wave Station, which had all these little micro sounds and stuff. And a lot of what we would do, we would record to DAT, which is digital audio tape. This is before people recorded to hard drive, which was kind of a pain and very expensive, but gave you good reproduction quality. And so that's kind of where I started ending my musical career. And after that, everything became virtual. And Tim will probably talk about more of the modern way of doing some of these things, a lot easier and a lot cheaper. but I had a lot of fun along the way, and sold all my gear and recouped a little bit of it. Had lots of credit card debt for a long time. Okay, Tim, you're up.
Okay, wow, that was a story. I started off like Betsy on an upright. My family has this piano that's kind of, I'm not exactly sure the story, but we somehow have it, and it's lived in our house for a long time. So started with piano lessons, and then like the piano lessons stopped, but I would like dink around and find like patterns that I liked and like mini songs. So I had like 3 songs that I knew that were just my own that I would play over and over when I felt like it. But then, like later in college, I had started to learn guitar, and started finding sounds that like sounded cool, and I would try and start writing lyrics to the parts that sounded cool, and that's how songwriting formed. So as far as recording, you just do with what you have, when you start. And I started with like my mom's old iPhone. I would use the note recorder and play samples into that.
So
Not
cool.
samples, but just like my scratch version of the song or a song idea. And then 3 days later there would be a cleaner version of it, because I had practiced and my hand wasn't as tired. And eventually, like, I would find that I would get gear that I thought I needed, not know how to use it, and then rediscover it like a couple years later at a time where like, no, this is exactly what I need right now. So like I got like a what do you call them? It was an M box, just your preamp into for GarageBand or for whatever. And I didn't know how to use it, and like everything was coming in all like scratchy and stuff. So I put that away for a while and kept using stuff that I understood. But then like over time, you pick up more lessons on like audio, um, just goodness. And eventually I was able to use the box and create simple songs on GarageBand. And then over time I started learning different instruments and would try like one song with one thing, try and plug in like a drum beat on the keyboard, and then like manipulate the MIDI so that it like actually sounded good and consistent in like little loops, and do different things like that. And over time, that led to messing around with MIDI keyboard as well, just trying to get inputs. And I actually picked up like a MIDI guitar that was from Guitar Hero. But like they had this awesome Guitar Hero guitar that had like each fret on the keyboard on the guitar. So it was like, instead of like a $500 MIDI guitar, you had one for like $50. It was pretty cool. But anyway, so a lot of my gear I've picked up used, and by used I mean of thrift shop variable quality. So just going out and finding different things, and you're just like, oh no, that looks really cool. I think I see it on Reverb, or you do a Google search and you're like, oh no, this is actually better than what I currently have, or different things. So like right now I've been playing with an M1 digital workstation from like the 1980s that has a lot of Enya sounds that I picked up thrifting, and that's been a lot of fun, and getting various voices in, as well as having like a fuller range for MIDI files, instead of having to press like the octave button to find the one that you want. So right now I'm using Ableton because I've been doing a lot of loop based stuff of late, but I'm really beginner at that. And there's so much you can learn in production, and there's so much you can learn in live music, and there's so much you can learn in all these different things. It becomes a question of like an RPG, either video game or pen and paper. Like, where do you want to level up in, and how do you want to make your musician build, right? Because you could be competent a little bit in all of these things and like get nowhere, or you can specialize in like one and be super proficient at that but know nothing about other things. Or these days, you know, like what is the optimal level of knowledge for where you are and where you want to go? I find is a question that I ask myself, and should be asking others more, but am not.
Yeah, I think that's the question too, is where do you want to take it? And is there a place that we can hear your songs, Tim?
Yeah. I don't have like a lot of professional songs up yet, but you can listen to some demos at wisp_music at on shoot, what's the
Not Spotify?
Not Spotify, it's the SoundCloud. That's the one.
Yeah,
So,
post a link in the comments after the show's posted as well.
yeah.
Yes, along with Matt's playlist. And
Yeah, a few playlists. Christian, anything you got? Tim, what do you do? Do you record anything to like your computer hard drive? Like, what do you use for that?
Yeah, I use right now. I'm using Ableton.
Ableton does that. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
And do you have like any mics or anything for like if you record your guitar?
Yeah, I usually go direct in through the box and through the you know, just your standard audio cable.
So what box do you use?
Just an old standard preamp.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what platform are you on? Are you Mac?
For recording, I use Mac.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Awesome. Well, we're almost out of time. Are there any other burning questions you want to ask? And we'll close out with one last question.
Christian,
you'll go ahead.
Yeah, can we find your stuff or your band somewhere, or do you have YouTube videos up, or?
My YouTube channel doesn't have everything I do on it, but it's Mr. Roboto 66, MrRoboto 66.
Great. All right. Well, guys, it's been wonderful having you. Thank you so much. We'll have you all on again. I know Tim will be back with us next week with Katie Ludden and Kristen J. Zach. And who knows what we'll talk about next week, but we'll find something fun. Yeah, and thank you to everyone who's been watching with us. We hope you found this informative and entertaining.
Thank you.